A note on the gambler with some flowers, spring flowers, and the macaws. This is originally a note on the gambler as adapted for the BBC, written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, um, the genius who has um, a couple of, no, three books, I'm sorry, on the list compiled by the Norwegian Book Club um, with the help of 100 or so writers from about 57 countries. The list of best 100 books ever written. He's there with Crime and Punishment, obviously, Karamazov Brothers, and The Demons. And this is a new adaptation. I have a note on another adaptation on Goodreads that was for Romanian National Radio Theatre, and this one is for the BBC. And I was thinking of a new reason to enjoy these adaptations. So far, I thought they're good because in some cases I find it difficult to read the original, and then you have an adaptation which helps you deal with that. In fact, most cases of these fabulous best works, I did go through about 80% I only have about 20 titles still missing. And so this helps to um, review the story that I know I've read in the original, but review it in about 2 hours or so, sometimes 1.5 hours, like this Gambler. Uh, where the story is complicated, for some reason the Magus came to mind. Uh, of course, you lose some of the wonderful description and wonderful material from the unabridged story narrative. But when that happens, you also find clarity, and a thick, difficult to follow plot becomes more accessible, easier to follow. And now I was thinking, you can read so many times. It's easier to read an adaptation, even if you again lose a lot in the case of beloved, wonderful, mesmerizing story. But you can't just go through War and Peace on a daily basis in no scenario. Even for the avid reader, War and Peace will take more than a week. I don't know. And you go through, well, adaptations of War and Peace will have at least 8-10 hours, I think. I think I have one somewhere in 6 episodes or so of 1.5 hours. So even an adaptation of a giant novel cannot be so short, brief. But still, generally it's accessible. So I listened to the Gamble for the local radio theater, and now it's the BBC, and you have the opportunity to uh, see this from different angles. It's a love story. Alexei Ivanovich is at the center. I would say he's the gambler, and he's in love with Polina Alexandrovna, Praskovia originally, but she likes to be called Polina. The other characters would be the Grier, Ashley, or Ashley, the General, and Granny, main characters. So Alexei Ivanovich is working for this general, and they're going to Roulettenburg, a fictional town, the town of the Rouletteville, as it's called later. And he's proclaiming at an early stage his love for Polina, and he says, as they're visiting around this town of gambling, look, I am ready to do anything and everything you say. And he's at the near the edge of a cliff, and if you ask me to take 4 steps, I will. Well, if you take 4 steps, you will die. You just ask me. And she is angry with him, and she says, okay, take 4 steps. Or so, I don't have the exact code, maybe there were 5 steps. And he doesn't. He doesn't. So he loses faith on that one. And they have an interesting relationship that seems to be conflictual for a while. She seems to reject him and disapprove of him, and I didn't know why for some time. But then with hindsight, it seems that she she knew she knew um, she knew she likes him, but the situation is impossible. So there's that celebrated or famous conflict between reason and passion. Reason says you have to do this thing, and passion, heart, love makes you do something else. And then she says all sorts of cruel things. And I'm sorry, because someone was asking for attention. I don't know if you hear it, and I was thinking it's here, but it's not. It's further on. Anyway, they weren't calling me, but I thought so for a while. Their material situation is precarious. They're waiting for Granny to die and inherit the money. Otherwise, the general, some young girls related to this Polina don't have the means to live decently. They would be poor, destitute, and they don't know how to cope with that because they're used with a good life. They belong to an aristocracy, and they can't just, or so they think, live in a go in the countryside and live in a hut in the cold and be hungry. So here comes the Grieux, who has a chateau, and there is an arrangement, a rather despicable one, wherein a contract has to be signed, and she would marry, but it would be a very mean, abject, in a way, understanding and arrangement. So there's gambling. The Granny comes. That's a humorous part and a surprise. Where Granny comes, she's alive, whereas the general and others thought she's dying, but she isn't. She's well, and she seems to gamble and lose everything at the roulette. But maybe it isn't so. It's for you to read and see.